Okay, going on to Mr. Gates. Our old friend Bill is talking about how AI will be teaching kids literacy in the next 18 months. At a summit, the billionaire said that AI will get the ability to be as good as a tutor, more than any human ever could. Mr. Gates, Microsoft, talking about, obviously he's still involved in Microsoft in some capacity, obviously many years since he's been running the ship, but obviously they are the closestly involved with OpenAI and everything that's happening with GPT. But he's at the forefront of this, and he's saying that, potentially tutors could be replaced, and why would you need them if you have AI which could do the same job just as well, similar to what I was saying about the news anchors earlier. Harry, what's your take on Bill Gates's shocking AI prediction?
I think this application of generative AI in education is just one of many examples, actually, but probably one of the best right now that's most tangible, which you can really see generative AI bringing benefit. And it's a nice antidote to some of the scaremongering and, well, some of the legitimate worries around AI as well that are out there that we discussed earlier. I think the real power with the latest developments around large language models is that ability to democratize information so much better than even the internet managed to achieve. The internet was a good step on the journey, but it's still fairly difficult to interface with. You still have to, and increasingly more so, have to wade through a lot of spam to get to the actual high quality information you need. There's still going to be the question about whether the information is exactly accurate, and that's going to be a challenge that needs to be solved. But to have a sort of a knowledge bank that you can interact with, in the way we've all been programmed to communicate with one another for now millennia. Yeah. It's extremely powerful, and I don't think we've quite understood the level of how useful that was going to be for everyone. It suddenly does turn everyone into a genuine expert. It just reminds me a little bit of that moment in The Matrix where they're sort of in that white room and it's like, download how to drive a helicopter. It's just one step away from that. Really, it's amazing.
It's got to link it up to a neural link, and then you can download skills. That would be the dream, right? Okay, Mikhail, what's your take on Bill Gates's prediction on AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't look at this as replacing teachers at all. I wouldn't look at it as replacing tutors at all. I think this is assistive and additive to education, right? Like, I work currently in healthcare, and what we're looking for is ways to create higher leverage for these people who are in key positions, right? So what you want to do is level the playing ground, so provide fundamental education at the same level to all people, creating equality of opportunity, right? Because we don't realistically have that. We have the idea of it, we don't have it in practice. I think the teachers are not the same, funding is not the same everywhere. So creating a baseline of literacy, perfect. Literacy is the ideal place to start because it doesn't deal with factuality, it doesn't deal with truthfulness or accuracy. So this is the perfect place to start, and it can create a more level playing field. And I think allowing teachers to, so saying, like, let's use these kinds of technologies to take kids from 0 to 1, and let's let teachers focus on taking kids from 1 to 10.
That's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
Giving them more face time, giving them higher leverage in their jobs, fantastic. Like, that could have a really significant impact on education. I think one of the largest problems growing up in Sweden that was always discussed on TV, which is maybe a sign of how boring Sweden is the problem of, like, ratios between students and teachers and the amount of face time that they get, or the lack thereof. And I think this is something that goes a far way to fixing that problem. So that's fantastic. Okay,
so you both seem very optimistic about this. Do you share the opinion, Fred, or do you have a different point of view?
I think it's definitely a step forward. And for me, the internet and things like YouTube and these knowledge bases have really democratized education. I mean, I know so many people in the UK, in the US, who are self-taught developers, coders working at FANG companies. And to even think of that when I was growing up people would think you're nuts. So, and of course that extends to people in developing countries too. So I think this is another step in that direction in allowing people to learn independent of teachers. But I think there is still definitely a role for an educator and for direction, for structure, for focus. this is a tool. It's a powerful tool, but it needs to be within the context. An education isn't just learning math or learning English. There's a lot of steps along the way, and it's also experience. And I think too much dependence on learning everything through video or on the internet is not a replacement for actually having life experiences. And that I am worried about, particularly having kids and the amount of time they spend on their phones or on watching screens versus actually going out and doing things.
Yes. It's only going to increase.
I mean, that's what I'm personally worried about.
Like Snapchat AI, they are getting into the kids and getting them early. What about the accuracy of the information? Because with education, that's obviously the most important thing about learning the right info. We've seen so many situations of AI, getting it wrong and giving people the wrong answer, and people just trusting that. One thing that is hilarious to me is I've started to see with my talent agency, I've started to see so many people applying for jobs, and they have the words on their CV as a large language model, and you can tell it's been written by GPT, and people have asked it to create a CV and answers, and they haven't even checked it. They've just trusted the information, which is just sloppiness, right? But we're probably going to see that with homework being given to teachers, and it's got AI generated answers. Could that be dumbing people down if we're just trusting AI to do it? I know you can make the counter argument and say, hey, look, we already have calculators. Did that stop people from doing math problems? But this is a bit different because AI can learn on itself, and whereas a calculator can't really, right? So what are your views on the downsides this could have from an education point of view? Harry, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree. There's a sort of shift in understanding there, and I don't think the calculator is perhaps the perfect analogy. It's sort of it just about works, but this is something slightly different. And yes, certainly things like plagiarism and all of those sort of topics need to be understood. But my feeling is that actually, although humans are quite lazy, we're also very naturally curious, and I think at a high level, at least, I think the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, because I think ultimately this will be used as a tool for discovery, less so of sort of cutting corners. And that I'm a bit more optimistic on that front, because I do think that the way that the education system might develop will sort of build this into it, and I think there'll be the way of testing people and all of that sort of stuff that will adapt to having this technology, and whether that's incorporating it and how do you use it and getting good at using it, all the way through to things like really testing whether you actually understand the subject matter or not. And I think that's still important. We shouldn't as with the internet, we shouldn't sort of let go of our kind of knowledge and sort of upload it to the internet and then not have to worry about it. A bit like you see it with Google Maps or something like that. It's much more difficult to learn your way around a city if you're just constantly using it. Actually, I still find it pretty impossible to navigate around London without using a map. But it is amazing how quickly you cede your understanding to a machine, and I think people will be aware of that.
Just trust it implicitly. I mean, using it is great, but just trusting it without questioning is obviously where it gets a little bit dangerous. Fred, what's your take on perhaps the negative side it could have on the education world?
I am concerned, particularly having children, and kind of this laziness. And I think what I wouldn't want to see is people not being encouraged and actually pushed to be creative. And I think for some facts, yeah, sure, you can look them up just like you can check a number on a calculator, but getting people to be creative, whether that be in writing in one area or in language or even in math, in trying to solve problems that haven't been solved, I really hope we don't lose that and people just become so dependent on maps. I mean, for myself, yeah, of course I use Google Maps. I have a built-in GPS in my car, but sometimes I just say, you know what? I'm not going to follow this because actually it's not always right and it doesn't always take you the best way. And I want to use my senses. I want to see the areas I'm going through and build my own mental map of where I'm going. And maybe I'll make a mistake and maybe I'll have to take me a little bit longer. But there's also value in that, in having that experience and putting in the context of a mental map. And and even confidence that you're not dependent on these devices, because sometimes you may not have access to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely, just trusting them, it takes away the opportunity to fail a lot of the time. And if you fail, you learn and you get better, right? So just solely relying on them could be a downside. What's your take, Mikel, on the potential risks of this being involved in education?
I think Fred made a really good, interesting point there around the laziness and around maybe people not learning to struggle with learning. Because I think that's very important, right? Like, acquisition of new knowledge doesn't come for free usually. Like, not deep knowledge, not like true understanding. It usually comes through like sitting with something, looking at it for a long time and developing your own model of something, not being told what the model is.
Yeah.
So I think one way you could address that is through new and novel user experiences around this sort of generative AI, around encouraging people to read, for example, rather than telling them what to think. But, you know, the thing is, you can never restrict people from using ChatGPT. You can't take this away now. You know, I believe Bill Gates was talking about like an 18-month sort of horizon.
Elon and Steve Wozniak and hundreds of others. I don't think Bill Gates signed it, but yeah, they wanted to pause development, right, for 18 months.
Yeah,
I agree with you. It can't be done, because even if the West or a certain country bans it, well, you know, China's not going to stop the development.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Sam Altman, what have you done to us? You know, it's too late now.
We're going through this period now where we're going to be discussing regulation.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Can it be done effectively in practice?
Yeah.
Doubtful, I would say. But, you know, in terms of how we adopt it in an educational environment or any sensitive environment, right, healthcare as well, if you were to adopt this kind of technology in healthcare, it would have to go to a rigorous process of like ethics reviews, long-term studies. I think there's a case that needs to be more broadly applied to AI products being brought into these sort of sensitive settings, where if you're going to be marketing something as a tool for children to use in a classroom, maybe we need to understand the long-term impacts of people using that product.
Have you guys used it at all to like teach yourself something? I'm interested.
I've tried actually actively, and I made the mistake of not using it for literacy, because I can read and write actually, but I tried to use it in sort of the linear algebra sort of space, because I'm interested in machine learning as a concept, and I have to say it's less impressive in mathematics than it is in terms of language. And I found some real struggles there where it would constantly contradict itself and say opposite things.
Yeah, I mean, the accuracy is still pretty hit and miss. I've recently moved more over to using Bard, which, I mean, a few weeks ago was a bit of a joke when it first was released, but now it's integrated into Google, and I like that it's real-time information rather than GPT, which is a few months old, so it's all hooked up to the internet. You don't need to worry about the plugins or anything. And I use it for a lot of stuff, like with YouTube videos. If I find a 10-minute YouTube video, you can put it in, and then it will read the captions, and then it will give you the top 3 bullet points. Rather than watching a 10-minute video, I can get the info instantly. So I do use it for learning, but it hasn't replaced the learning. I still watch the video, and I just get that to summarize it as well. Have you used it for education, or Fred? Are you using AI tools much?
I've played around with them, trying to solve like very discrete problems, or asking questions like, you know, write me a press release or summarize this article, like that kind of just testing. I wouldn't say broad, you know, learning.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a mixed result. Still impressive, but you can see the evolution, particularly if you've followed sort of the amount of data and the size of the models, and how the computing power has just increased over time. A relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
It's definitely exciting.